Hey summoners, make sure you're subscribed to the Mobalytics YouTube channel and hit that bell button, that way you're always up to date and part of our notification squad. Hello summoners and welcome back to the Mobalytics patch 8.14 video tier list. Before we start, I have some exciting news. This is going to be awesome and I'm glad we're doing it. We are going to start doing a tier list Q&A, so on the off weeks, so like next week for example, when there is no tier list because there's not a new patch, we're going to be answering questions, direct Q&A, any questions that you have about the tier list, any champions you want further explained, we will be doing it in off weeks and be making a video about it. This means that it's super important in the comment section down below that you guys let us know what questions you want answered, anything about the tier list at all. Learning curve, a specific champion's placement, what build or runes am I supposed to do on any champion, anything like that, let us know. This also means if there's any other comments that you like, so if somebody else asked about Kindred and you want to know about Kindred or you like their question, please upvote it down below. But you guys are smart, you know what you're doing, you know how Q&A works, so I was just letting you know before we start. Anyway, let's get into it. One of the big sweeping landscape changes to this patch is to teleport, making it a 6-minute cooldown. In competitive play, teleport is a little bit of a problem. Sometimes the mid, top, and bot laner, and sometimes the support are all taking teleport, which is a little bit of an issue in competitive, but overall in solo queue, other than the top and the mid laner, usually ADCs are still sticking to heal. But for our bottom lane mage friends and for top laners, it is a little bit frustrating, however we will see how this mixes up the game. Anyway, let's get right into the list. Starting off in the top lane, we've got some new faces in S tier, most notably Garen and Yorick. It's kind of funny because for a very long time Garen has been an A or B tier champion on our list, and that's because not only is he so good in lower ranks, but he's incredibly easy to play and there's nothing too hard about it. He's the perfect autofill top laner. But recently, looking at the statistics, Garen is still doing well even in higher ranks, probably the best he's ever done. Not only have there been higher elo Garen mains popping up, but the reason is also because of a new build and a new strategy. For the longest time, Garen players were maxing E and going Black Cleaver, but if you've seen some of the Q-max Garens with a Trinity Force, he hits like a truck. He kills you in one rotation whether you're the villain or not. This is because a while ago Garen received changes to his E, making it give you the Cleaver passive, it gives you Armor Shred, so maxing your Q and going for a Trinity Force is already a lot of damage. There are a few new friends in S tier as well for top lane, like Aatrox and Rengar. Rengar top lane is something that's been good for years, and even way back in the days of Ryan Choi, it was something that was played. However, right now it's specifically really good. Again, teleport has been nerfed, and typically Rengar top lanes are going to go Ignite in solo queue, and he's so oppressive in top lane and so hard to deal with that it makes it pretty frustrating and overall not fun to play against. The Aatrox rework after he received a hotfix turns out to be incredibly powerful. If you watch Rift Rivals, he's disgusting, and his solo queue win rates for top lane are quite good as well. He did receive a little bit of a nerf and a slight hotfix revert, but overall the champion is still disgusting and is definitely top tier. Onto the Forest Dwellers, we have several different people in the jungle tier list, especially for A tier, but for the rest of the role, like A and B tier, most of the things are the same. Kha'Zix and Kayn have worked their way back into B tier, and I really like Poppy Jungle as well. It's something that's popped up, and she continues to receive a couple buffs here and there, so don't be afraid to give her a try. For Shyvana, Amumu, Jax, and Jarvan, they're kind of your prototypical B tier junglers. They're not bad, but if you like them and you play them, you can definitely make them work, but they're not OP. And as for Nocturne, he did drop down to B from S tier. He had a big fall from grace, as well as some hotfix nerf that he received on the last patch, made it so that he really doesn't feel as good as he used to feel. As for Kindred, I think I said in the last tier list 2 weeks ago that if she receives enough buffs and there are enough nerfs to other junglers, eventually the champion is going to be S tier, and that time has come. Riot straight buffed this champion 5 or 6 different times, so now the champion is just OP and does really well. She even popped up a bit in competitive play, and Kindred overall, they together are a really good champ. You can see Challenger Jungler and Kindred one trick, Forests Within GPI, and you can see just how well he's been doing. You can see all types of performance metrics. For example, after the buffs to Kindred, his farming has gone up significantly. He's doing well across the map, having high objectives and a high farming score. If you would like to see your GPI and compare yourself to other Challenger players or your friends, make sure you check out the product at mobalytics.gg. For a lot of the same reasons that Rengar top is good, Rengar jungle is also really good, and actually you should try the Fleet Footwork build. For some reason the player base is not quite adapted to this just yet, and most of them are taking Dark Harvest or Electrocute, but trust me, Fleet Footwork is really good. Fleet Footwork allows you to heal and have better sustain, you move around faster so you can reposition, and the attack speed that you get in the runes is significant as well, and plus on Rengar you deal so much damage anyway that Electrocute and Dark Harvest are pretty overrated. Fleet Footwork is definitely the best option for Rengar jungle. For mid lane, we have a few champions moving down, like Zoe and Zed, however Talon, Aurelion Sol, Twisted Fate, and Anivia still find themselves in S tier. These 4 champions in S are just solid picks, and they have been all season, and until Riot properly nerfs not just a little bit of rake damage on Talon's W, but until they properly nerf Aurelion Sol, Talon, and Twisted Fate, they are gonna stay S tier all season. They are just the best champions you can pick for climbing and learning how to play in solo queue. There are 2 AP assassins I would like to talk about for the mid lane tier list that even though they're not S, I think they're really good in LeBlanc and Ahri. LeBlanc after her revert is just the old LeBlanc that we all know, love, and hate. She has incredible burst potential and can take off any game that she gets snowballing and gets kills. Overall, the champion just doesn't really have the carry potential and the reliability of the other S tier champions, but if you're a LeBlanc main, don't worry, your champ is still really good. As for Ahri, I want to talk about her because she received some buffs on this patch and they are impactful. The mana cost reduction and the duration buff on your charm makes it much better early game and you don't have to 2-point your charm. Ahri is not OP, but she's been sleeper really good for quite a while. So after these nice little buffs, it makes her gank assist in the early parts of the game much better due to the charm duration increase, and overall she's going to be good. Alright, moving on to bot lane. This is the craziest role this patch by far, and we have a ton of different stuff in S tier. I can't believe I call this, or I used to call this role 80 carries. This is just wild. Look at S tier. So before we go one by one and talk about some of the specific champions, let's move away from S tier for just a second and let's talk about A and B tier and marksman. During the 8.13b hotfix, they did buff marksman, traditional marksman, quite a bit. Stormrazor was buffed, a couple champions, specifically like Tristana and Varus were buffed, and on this patch specifically, Vayne and Sivir are receiving buffs as well. So traditional marksman, if a lot of things are banned and you're not comfortable, some really good ones right now are things like Jhin, Jinx, Xayah, and with the Sivir buffs, and specifically in a few matchups, Twitch and Vayne can be okay. Kai'Sa is really good in high elo and in the funnel strat, but with the Rageblade nerfs, Kai'Sa does suffer quite a bit more than in previous patches. Okay, that's on from the traditional 80 carries. Yes, you can play a few marksmen and they're not awful, but now let's talk about S tier. For marksmen, if you will, or ones that don't even really build crit, Misfortune, Draven, and Quinn are all disgusting. For Lucian, you go Blade of the Ruin King, Black Cleaver, Essence Reaver, and if you win the game before 30 minutes, it's easy ride, easy time. Heimerdinger bot lane has popped up all around the world, and if you watched Rift Rivals, you saw how dominant it could be. It started in EU with Vitality picking it up and making it very successful, and overall the champion is just disgusting bot lane. You hit one empowered grenade, you hit them with a W, and if they don't die instantly, you take 80% of their health. Even if you do die very quickly on Heimer, you just have so much damage and so much pushing power, nobody can really deal with you. Swain as a bot lane carry is also in the same boat. He has a lot of pushing power with his Q, he's tankier than Heimer and does overall less damage, but he's synergistic with a lot of the supports. The thing about Swain in the bot lane as opposed to in a solo lane is that you're more likely to hit your E, and because every support in the game pretty much has crowd control, it means that you can easily pull them in with your passive. A lot of traditional marksmen or other 80 carries or bot lane carries just cannot deal with Swain. He's too tanky, too much pushing power, he can dive you no problem with his ultimate, he's gross. Irelia Favor has moved out for bot lane, but Yasuo Favor has moved up. I think Yasuo's best role right now is as a bot lane carry. Starting a Relic Shield, Doran's Blade, or Doran's Shield doesn't really matter. I've played a bunch of Yasuo 80 carry and I think Relic Shield makes the most sense. Get your support income going, get your one item, you're really strong with Conqueror, you can kill people no problem, Wind Wall is a nightmare to deal with in the bot lane, you can deny so much from the enemy team, and you're incredibly powerful once you get some items. Lastly, for supports, this role is the most stable of any one this patch. We've seen Bard move out of S tier back down to A, but the rest of S tier is all the same. For some reason, people are just not winning as much as they should be on Zyra. When it comes to champion power, she's S or even more than S, but when it comes to statistically, she's not doing that well. What we did instead was kept her in S tier, but we upped her difficulty learning curve, and partly this is because we think Zyra players are just not doing what they need to be doing. She was probably harder than we originally expected to play, and I guess Zyra is a situation where there's not too much to master, but there is a lot to mess up. Not hitting your Qs, not hitting the root, and especially not getting your plants going and realizing where your plants are, that's probably the big learning curve for the champ. Soraka is in A tier and she's overall very effective, but the only difference is that she's so bad versus some of the S tier things that if they do pick things like Brand or Rakan or Zyra, you just die instantly. However, picking Soraka against the right team composition and having the right team composition on your team, scaling up into that late game, she will be a great champion and you can definitely make her work. At the end of the tier list, something we wanted to start doing was actually give you a couple of honorable mentions or talk about things further. Our 3 honorable mentions this patch, even though 2 of them are on the list, are Kalista, Pyke, and Jace. Jace was in A tier for top lane, but I suspect he could be S tier with the new Ghost Poro. The new Ghost Poro allows you to actually move into enemy territory, place a ward, and then get some AD in the early game, and because Jace pushes and plays really aggressive in the early parts of the game, this means that the Ghost Poro is good for him, and if he goes down the domination tree, this is something he would want to consider. As for Kalista, she is a decent marksman, she's a pretty good AD carry, but the problem is she has such a high learning curve and she's so hard to play that if you're not really like Diamond Plus, or if you play in a duo queue, or if you're a Kalista main, it's really hard to make her work, but when it comes to champion power, do not underestimate how good Kalista is right now. Lastly, talking about Pyke, realistically, again, champion power, Pyke is probably S tier, maybe even God tier. We've seen him in competitive play, and he's really good in high elo solo queue, but his win rate and statistics just aren't there. This is because he's still new and he is hard to play, he does have a high learning curve, but we do not want to say that Pyke realistically isn't S tier, we just want to say on a tier list for climbing, he probably is more like A tier. But the champion no doubt is really strong. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the Mobalytics patch 8.14 tier list. Please follow us on all of our socials. Remember, this time we're doing Q&A, so let us know your questions down below. Check out the product at mobalytics.gg, and we'll see you next time.